Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna
Hare
devotees, thank you for joining us for our Sunday Zoom program. We welcome everyone who has joined us. And before we start, I would like to wish all the fathers and Chandrasekhar Maharaj a very, very, very happy Father's Day. We are very fortunate that we also have a very Prabhupada senior disciple who is our uncle, who is also our father. So, Maharaj, a very, very happy Father's Day to you. We're very blessed that we have our uncle with us, and we are fortunate at this time. So thank you for giving us your time, Maharaj. And I welcome all the devotees also here. And I would like to just share a little bit that I know of Maharaj. First of all, I'm sure many of us have seen Maharaj always faithfully, supportively attending our Rath Yatras for the past 10, 11 years. And Maharaj is always the first one to be in front of the cart, the first one to get us all aroused in the kirtan, the first one to make us dance. So we are very, very blessed that even though we couldn't have a Rath Yatra this year, that we have Maharaj with us. So at least we have good memories that Maharaj is always there to support ISKCON Harrisburg in Srila Prabhupada's mission. Maharaj is actually living in Brooklyn, New York, and he's a very senior disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and he joined the movement in the mid-70s. Maharaj has been preaching in New York, Queens, Manhattan, Brooklyn, Philadelphia, New Jersey. That's his home. I think it's home for him. And Maharaj just so wonderful preaching, educating the masses. As we know, New York is a perfect example of a melting pot. So I'm sure Maharaj meets all kinds of people in New York, and to educate such a melting pot on the Vedic knowledge is definitely an amazing service. And we are very fortunate and very blessed to have Maharaj with us. Maharaj, with further delay, I give all the time to you.
Okay.
Hare
Thank you
Krishna.
all very much for tuning in. We'll see how this rolls today. I was asked to speak about this concept of Bhakti Yoga versus Karma. So we have kind of an overview of the Vedic system. I was hoping to do that and kind of give a sense of how Bhakti Yoga and Karma Yoga relate to one another. This issue is kind of interesting, and when I first got the invitation, I was told that there was a lecture by me about this, and I thought, really? I wasn't aware that any of my lectures were being taped, much less put on the internet. But I looked, and someone had taped one that I had made in Cheshire, in up there in the New England states, Connecticut, and I listened back to it to see what it was I was talking about. So this is kind of an update of that lecture that I gave some years ago in Cheshire. Bhakti Yoga is really a part of what we sometimes call the yoga ladder. And Krishna consciousness is one aspect of a much larger group of presentations that are a part of the Vedic system. Now, the Vedas are ancient scriptures, and for people who come from India even, and people who certainly, people who don't come from India, are very confused over what these Vedic literatures actually talk about. And there's a lot of confusion about it because there's so many overlays. And thinking about it, I thought that I would kind of talk about some of these overlays of the Vedic system. And this will give us a picture of what we really mean by the word Bhakti Yoga and Karma Yoga. So all the Vedic overviews, because if you talk to people in India, people know about the Vedas, at least those who are Hindu in their background. They know about the Vedas, but they may have very, very different views about what the Vedas are saying. And there's a reason for that. And we're going to talk about that here. Uh, the Vedas themselves were written around, 3000 BC. And of course, they discuss all kinds of different things, karma, philosophy, reincarnation, devotion, creation, yoga systems, society, renunciation, culture, morality, political history, um, noble, progressive life, the spiritual world, the end of the universe, the complications of action, duty, honor, political science, art, poetry, drama, history, medicine, weaponry, cosmology, linguistics, mathematics, logic, and the future. So the Vedas cover all these different subject matters, and they do so in various places, in various different ways. And let's take an overview of the Vedas themselves. This is not the focus of what I'm going to talk about, but this will give you an idea by looking at the overall picture. Usually when we say Vedas, we think of the four main Vedas, the Rig, Sama, Atharva, and Yajurveda. But as devotees, we almost never read these, and these have very little to give us, the Rig, Sama, Atharva, and Yajurvedas. But there are two main categories of what came out of the Vedic knowledge. And historically speaking, those who accepted the Vedas, this is called the Asti tradition. And Asti is a Sanskrit word which means it is so. And there are those who rejected the Vedic tradition, and that's called the Nasti tradition. And that's, of course, Buddhism rejected the Vedas. Jainism rejected the Vedas. Our modern Abrahamic religions, namely Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, they generally reject the Vedas. And most of modern religions do. So these are all Nasti traditions. And now, moving a little beyond this, this is a very important distinction, that as far as Vedas go, there are two main approaches to it. One of them is the path of enjoyment, sometimes called Pravrti Marg, and there's the path of renunciation, sometimes called Nivritti Marg. Everything in Pravrti Marg is done with the sense of enjoyment. We do things so that we can increase our enjoyment. That's the real goal. We're performing various kinds of functions, various kinds of sacrifices, various kinds of austerities, so that we will be able to enjoy. And usually this is done following various kinds of rituals that are done very precisely. And if we look at the Vedas, we see most of the Vedic literature is about this system. And what's conspicuous by its absence is that transcendence is not really addressed very much in this aspect of the Vedas. Now we'll contrast this to Nivritti Marg, where everything is done to please Krishna. So these two are a very important category. Both of these apply to the Asti, or the accepting Vedic tradition. You won't find this in the other traditions, the ones that reject the Vedas. But in the Vedas, we'll see these two basic categories. And Prabhupada talks about these in various kinds of purports in his presentation on Bhagavatam and so forth. So here's a quick overview. This is not not really the dead center of what I'm talking about, but I just want to give you an understanding of how the Vedas actually are laid out. So we have the four Vedas. And in Srimad Bhagavatam, we learn that the Vedas were compiled by Vyasadeva. He didn't actually write them, he spoke them. And he spoke them to Ganesh. And Ganesh actually was the scribe, or the person that wrote them down. The Vedas were heard by Lord Brahma in the form of Krishna's flute. And then out of Brahma's four mouths came these Vedas, kind of in a helter-skelter fashion, as if jewels were being spouted out from all of Brahma's mouths, and they just fell in random fashion on the ground. And then later they were combined into four divisions by Veda Vyasa, the Rig, Sama, Atharva, and Yajur. Sometimes it's said that there was one Veda before, and sometimes that one Veda is called the Yajur Veda, and sometimes that one Veda is called the Atharva Veda, which I don't know which it is, but I've seen in some places they call the original Veda the Yajur Veda, and in some places they call it the Atharva. At any rate, now once they're divided into four parts, then Veda Vyas is described in Srimad Bhagavatam as deputing four different professors: Pila, Jaimini, Vaisampayana, and Sumanta Angira, to further subdivide and expand the Vedas. So Pila Rishi expanded the Rig Veda into 21 subdivisions. Jaimini subdivided the Samaveda into 1,000 divisions. Vaisampayana, one of the students of Veda Vyas, expanded the Yajur Veda into 100 divisions. And Sumanta Angira Muni expanded the Atharva into 9 divisions. And so the original Vedas are usually also then again called the Samhitas. And these are further expanded into Brahmanas, Aranyakas, and Upanishads. Each one of these different 4 Vedic systems has 4 subdivisions: the Samhitas, the Brahmanas, the Aranyakas, and Upanishads. So even more divisions are expanded here. Even more divisions are expanded. So we've started to see thousands of literatures being expanded. The Brahmanas were literatures that were generally useful in the performance of sacrifices for people who lived at home and perform these various sacrifices for auspicious circumstances in their household. This is primarily what's in the substance of this classification known as Brahmanas. In their Aranyakas, these are Vedas that were compiled for the forest dwellers, people who had now given up home and were living in the forest to complete their lives of renunciation so that when they left their body, they would not be attached. And so these are the Aranyakas. And now we talk about finally the Upanishads. And the Upanishads are where we first start to understand what's going on with the rest of the Vedas. You know, so far the Rig, Sama, Yajur, and Atharva Vid are mostly various literatures that describe the glories of and sacrifices to mostly the various demigods, you know. And in this way, by propitiating various demigods, one is able to get some wonderful material benefit. That's primarily the purpose of all this stuff. And we don't have any sense of, well, who are these people? Why do we have to offer them sacrifices? What's going on here? Is this really the purpose of life? These things are not described. But in the Upanishads, we begin to hear that. And Prabhupada has one time described the Upanishads as being the headlines of the Vedas. So the Upanishads try to give us a philosophy behind the picture of all these sacrifices and these glorifications of various demigods. And so once we've discussed this, then we can talk about, and there are 108 Upanishads all total. Then we have the Puranas, which are, each Purana has, the major Puranas, there are 18 of them. 6 of them are for those in the modes of goodness, 6 of them are for those in the modes of passion, and 6 of them are for those in the modes of ignorance. And these Puranas, they have, different subject matters. And each Purana has, the major Puranas have 8 major subject matters. And the Upa Puranas, or the minor ones, they have only 4 of those 8 different subject matters. And once Vyasadeva had compiled all this, he discovered that most people would be unable to understand the Vedic literatures. So he put them in story form. And that's where we get the Puranas. Actually, the Itihasas. The Puranas are also somewhat written like this. They give the philosophy of the Upanishads in story form. And the Itihasas are even more story-like, so that through telling of the stories, people who were not so gifted at philosophy could understand these Vedic principles, what they should live by, what they should do, and what they should avoid. And of course, the Mahabharata and Ramayana and others fall into the category of itihasas. After all this was written, Vedavyas felt there was something deeply missing in his presentation, and that's when he, he wrote the Vedanta Sutra, which was a summary of all the Vedas. It was supposed to tie together all the Vedic knowledge, but it is very, very dense. And if you try to understand it, you will be lost unless you're already very, very familiar with the Vedas, because nothing is described in detail. Everything is talked about in very, very abstract generalities, very small, hard to grasp generalities. So this is the Vedanta Sutra. And Vyasadeva felt there was something missing from his presentation. And in Bhagavatam, in the, I believe, 6th chapter of the 1st canto, that's where Vyasadeva feels that there is something seriously missing in his presentation of the Vedas. And Vedavyas himself feels that he did not give specific emphasis to the process of Bhakti Yoga, although he did talk about Bhakti Yoga in all this other stuff that we've just talked about. He did speak about it, but he didn't give specific emphasis to it. And so now he decides that he should probably do that. And he asks Narada Muni, who is his spiritual master. Narada Muni said that although he described the Supreme, he did not give any specific emphasis to Krishna, the one and only avatar or avatari, the source of everything else. So he decides to do that, and that's where we get the Bhagavat Purana, or the Srimad Bhagavatam. So now you can see that all this older stuff, all the stuff we've been talking up until now, is finally superseded by one particular literature, the Bhagavatam. And the Bhagavatam itself tells us that it's the cream of all Vedic literatures. And so now you can understand why there are so many different views on the Vedas. Because if you come into the Vedas and you start reading the Rig, Sama, Atharva, and Yajurveda, you'll wonder, well, what's all this about? I have to do all these sacrifices so demigods will like me? And certainly many people do come away with that basic understanding. And this is what we were talking about a minute ago, is what we call pravrti marg, this idea of doing various rituals for the sake of demigods, or doing them even for the sake of the Supreme. But basically the whole idea is to get material sense gratification. So as you see, this whole big picture that we've been talking about, for Bhakti Yoga, we're focusing only on one of the Puranas, of the 18 Puranas, the Bhagavatam, or Bhagavat Purana. It's a Purana for those in the mode of goodness, and it is head and shoulders above all the other Vedic literatures. Now, this gives you an idea why there's so much confusion about the Vedas and about what the philosophy of the Vedas is. So now let's go do a quick religious overlay. Over the years, the Vedic system has become, as a result of the Kali Yuga, has become dissipated and degraded. And there have been various branches that have come off, you know. We know that the Vaishnava tradition is the largest of the traditions that has sprung from the Vedas. And then we have Shaivism, and Shakta worship, and Advaita Vedanta. And these four differ by what is the focus of that religion. So Vaishnavism, the focus of that religion is Krishna. For Shaivism, the focus of that religion is Shiva. As we see, number 2 is Shiva over there in the bottom right corner. And Shakta worship, it's Durga Devi. You know, she's in the top right corner. And for Advaita Vedanta, it's the Brahman, or the impersonal. And there in 4, we have a picture of Adi Shankara, who evangelized that particular system of understanding. So this is why when you talk to people who say something about the Vedas, They may not be Vaishnavas. They may be Shaivites or Durga worshippers, or they may be actually interested in the Advaita Vedanta system. And if so, they will not have any particular interest in Krishna, and they will not have any particular interest in Bhakti Yoga. So again, if we look at this map that we just looked at, the other various branches of this religious overlay will have different uh, different sections of the Vedas that they consider important. So we consider the Srimad Bhagavatam important because it says it is, and it's written by Vyasadeva, and it says it's better than the rest of the Vedas, and it gives the reasons why. Whereas other branches of the Vedic tradition will not see it the same way. The Shaivites, they look at a different set of the Vedic literatures. They look oftentimes at these Puranas that are in the mode of ignorance or mode of passion for their understanding of what's actually the tradition. And Durga worshippers similarly, and with Advaita Vedanta, they look almost exclusively at the Upanishads, and they do not place much importance then on especially the Puranas, particularly the Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's one overlay, these various different religious groupings. Now let's look at another overlay. This is one that I won't get into because it's quite complex. But this is what are sometimes called the six darshans: Nyaya, logic; Vaisheshika, atomic theory; Sankhya, the 24 elements; yoga, the yoga systems; karma mimamsa, the performance of duty; and uttara mimamsa, which is us. You know, we are the Vaishnava tradition, and we follow the uttara mimamsa, or the process given by Vyasadeva of actual worship for the Supreme. Whereas those who are involved in Nyaya are basically interested in logic. And generally, most of these other systems of the philosophical overviews are focused on either the Brahman, or they're just focused on the heavenly worlds or material happiness, and that's their total focus. So Nyaya is mostly focused on the impersonal. Vaisheshika also is focused more on material sense gratification. Sankhya philosophy doesn't accept the supreme. The yoga systems, they used to talk about the acceptance of the Paramatma in the heart, but more modern yoga systems are more geared toward the impersonal. And karma mimamsa is mostly about material happiness. Only uttara mimamsa, the system that we are a part of, talks about the idea of worshiping Krishna. So moving further along here, now we're getting closer to our real topic for today: the path of karma kanda, the path of jnana, the path of yoga, and the path of bhakti. So sometimes these are called margas, or overlays, or paths. So Prabhupada, in many of the places in his purports, talks about the path of karma kanda, which is fruit of work. And he talks about the path of jnana, which is the path of knowledge. And he talks about the path of yoga, or meditational practice. And finally, the path of bhakti, which is the path of devotion to God. And you all probably recognize that this is what we are a part of, this path or this overlay of being devoted to God. That's what we talk about. We talk about overcoming the path of karma, the path of jnana, the path of yoga. We talk about overcoming them, because unless one is in unalloyed devotion, so this is what we mean by devotion, is that it gives up elements of karma, kanda, jnana, and yoga. It gives them up. So this is the nature of karma and yoga and bhakti. Now, to finally hone in on our real main topic here, let's look at the yoga ladder, because this is where karma and jnana and bhakti and all these things fit in. there is a kind of yoga ladder which is discussed in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna, as far as I know, never uses the word yoga ladder, but many other commentators have, and Burijan in his Surrender Unto Me explanation of Bhagavad Gita, he uses the yoga ladder and he describes it in this way. And the yoga ladder is designed so that people will gradually rise to understand the highest truth, but often people will be stuck at some intermediate level. Give me a second here. I need to drink something. So here we're talking about the lowest rung on the yoga ladder. The lowest rung is just fulfilling desires, fulfilling material desires. This animals do, and this is why it's called animal life. Because if a human being does not rise above this platform, then the human being will simply get an animal birth the next time that they are reincarnated. So this is the lowest rung of the yoga ladder. Higher than animal life is the next step up, which is called karma kanda. Now, karma kanda means, as we've been talking about, one performs Vedic rituals for personal desires. We're performing rituals, but the goal of performing those rituals is to fulfill various personal desires. And this is higher than just grossly fulfilling material desires by working hard or even by illegal or abusive measures that sometimes people do to fulfill their material desires. So instead of doing that, we perform various rituals. Oftentimes, this includes various sacrifices and havans and various propitiations of the demigods and various austerities and other observances that are done, which commonly take place in India, that people from India commonly perform. And this is the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas. We notice that there is very little focus on the Supreme Lord here. If anything, there's some focus on various demigods, but not much focus on the Supreme Lord. Now we move to the next level of the yoga ladder, which is sometimes called karma yoga. Karma yoga is a slippery word. Because it means different things in different contexts. But right now in this context, I'm using karma yoga to mean that a person is working for the Supreme. However, the reason people are working for the Supreme is they hope that the Supreme will fulfill their material desires. So you'll notice the similarity between these bottom three, karma yoga, karma kanda, and animal life. All three of them have the fundamental real goal of human beings is to enjoy material life in some way or another. Those at the bottom enjoy it in a very disrespectful, in a very adharmic way, so they suffer. Whereas the other two try to enjoy the material world, but they do so in a less adharmic way. So number 5, people enjoy or try to enjoy, try to enjoy the material world through various Vedic rituals. But in 4, they try to enjoy the material world by worshiping God, but they're not really worshiping God for God's sake. They're worshiping God so that God will give them what they hope that what they want is what they are actually hoping for. Now, when we get to 3, Jnana Yoga, when we get to Jnana Yoga, that's the first time where we actually talk about people who know that sense gratification or material happiness cannot be the goal of life. It's a useless thing, that it appears in the material world, but actually we cannot really benefit from it. We will never get any real satisfaction out of the material world. So the Gyan Yogi is trying to understand, well, if material sense gratification is not the goal of life, well, what is the goal of life? And so therefore, a Jnana Yogi begins to study various mysterious um, writings of various religious and spiritual traditions to try to understand what is the mystery behind the material world. Now, 4, 5, and 6, this is where 99.9% of all humans are. They're in this categories of worshiping God, but for material desires, or just performing Vedic rituals, or not even caring about anything, just trying to get their material desires fulfilled. This is where most people are. But you'll find a few Jnana Yogis, those who have realized that there's something fishy about this place, and they're trying to figure it out. Above them on the yoga ladder is this Astanga Yoga, or meditation on the Supersoul. So the Astanga Yogis, they are actually aware that also material sense gratification is not the goal of life. And they understand that there's either the Supreme Lord in the heart, those that are advanced Astanga Yogis, those who are actually Vaishnav in their leanings, they understand that the Supreme Lord is in the heart, and they're performing the yoga practice to walk the chakras throughout the body, the Sad chakra system, and meet the Supreme Lord in the heart. That's what they're after. But more mundane forms of Astanga Yogis are either trying to depersonalize into the Brahman, or they're trying to develop mystic powers, which is also a possible thing by the Astanga Yoga process. So now in 2 and 3, there is somewhat of a blur or confusion of what the ultimate goal is. But finally, when we get up to top rung here, Bhakti Yoga, we understand what the bottom line is. We understand for the first time that it's not the Brahman we're shooting for. It's not even the Paramatma that we're looking for. We're looking for a relationship with Krishna, the Bhagavan feature of the Supreme. This is the goal of the Bhakti Yogi, and the Bhakti Yogi knows that he is not serving God so that God will fulfill his material desires. That's what makes him different from the Karma Yogi. So this is a gradual process. Generally speaking, people work their way up. As we've said before, that it's not necessary to go through all 6 stages. One can skip stages, but what I've discovered in practical life is that when you skip stages, you go through a kind of quasi-Astanga Yogi phase in Bhakti Yoga, or a quasi-Jnana Yogi stage in Bhakti Yoga, or you go through a quasi-Karma Yogi stage in Bhakti Yoga. So but of course, if you come to Bhakti Yoga right away, you will save much, much time. Whereas if you go through each one step by step, you will be wasting time. That's why the sooner and the more assiduously you can grasp onto the process of bhakti, the better off you are. So that's why Prabhupada always talks about Bhakti Yoga. And Bhakti Yoga is the queen of all the yogas. We are told by Rupa Goswami and other Vaishnavacharyas that there is nothing in any of these other yogas that you cannot achieve through Bhakti Yoga. But in Bhakti Yoga, there's things you get that you cannot get in any of these other systems. That's why we need to come to Bhakti Yoga first. And if we compare step 1, Bhakti Yoga, to Karma Yoga, which is step 4, In both cases, we have knowledge of God. However, the karma yogi believes in God, but also believes in sense gratification, whereas the bhakti yogi understands God, but he understands at least that sense gratification should not be his goal. He's not serving God for sense gratification. He's serving God because he's serving God. And though he may also still want sense gratification, the bhakti yogi, he knows that generally speaking, he shouldn't. But the karma yogi, he has no awareness that sense gratification is an impediment to his service to God. He has no idea that this is wrong. So this is why someone who is a uh, karma yogi makes very slow progress oftentimes, because although they're worshiping God, they are primarily focused on satisfying their material desires. All right, so that's kind of a quick overview of the whole thing. Let me now ask for any questions about any of that, and then we can maybe kind of clarify some of the points a little more closely.
If anyone has any questions, can you please use this opportunity? This is a wonderful, wonderful discussion. Very clear, very, it's just so plain before our eyes. Please do unmute yourself, ask the question and mute back. That way there is no interference when Maharaj answers your question. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, this is Jitamitra Govindadas. I had a question regarding the yoga ladder. Is
Uh-huh.
the karma yoga that you mentioned in the yoga ladder the same as the karma yoga that Lord Krishna is mentioning in the Bhagavad Gita, that do your duty but offer the fruits of those results unto me? Are those two the same things?
Mm. I'm glad you asked that question. That was one thing that I kind of touched in passing as I was going through. That karma yoga means three completely different things in the Bhagavad Gita. Unless you focus in on that, you're going to be confused by Bhagavad Gita. I was for a long time. In one place, Krishna is speaking about karma yoga, and what he means is that one is working for Krishna. Because Arjuna, his original proposition is that he feels that he will be contaminated by sinful action if he fights the battle of Kurukshetra. And he feels the solution to his contamination would be to not act, to cease from acting. And what actually Krishna is telling him is, no, you're not supposed to refrain from acting, but you're supposed to act and give the fruits to me. And this Krishna calls karma yoga. And this is meaning working for Krishna. And that is just a synonym for bhakti yoga. There's no difference between that and bhakti yoga in that context. But later on, we find that karma yoga means to work and to have Krishna as a focus, but really one is interested in good karma. One is working in the sense that one wants material benefit. And Krishna may be in the picture, but Krishna is kind of a side issue. He's not the real main point. So when a person is trying to get material gratification, and they may even be doing some worship of God, or they may give some lip service to God, such a person is performing a different kind of karma yoga. This karma yoga is not bhakti yoga. This is actually what we generally call karma. In other words, the path of material enjoyment. One is either aware or not aware of God, but still the goal is material enjoyment. And this is certainly not the same thing as the first version of karma yoga that we just talked about, where Arjuna is being told to work for Krishna, which means to do bhakti yoga. But here, this representation of the idea of karma yoga means to work for material benedictions. And that's very different. Now, the third use of karma yoga in Bhagavad Gita is where it's meant, where we talk about karma mishra bhakti, which is actually what devotees generally do. Karma mishra bhakti is where we understand that the purpose of devotional service is to please Krishna, but we may still have our own material desires. We know that it's not the right thing. We know it's not the highest thing, but because we're addicted to material sense gratification, we go on in material desire. But at the same time, we are asking Krishna not to take that so seriously. So this is still a third understanding of karma yoga. So it's a tricky word, and you have to be very careful what the context is. Are we talking about working for Krishna, as we did in the first case, where Arjuna is being told not to sit on his hands and meditate, but he's supposed to engage in battle? That's devotional service. That, in that sense, karma yoga and bhakti yoga are the same thing. In the second sense, where we're talking about people working for their material sense gratification, for their material benefit, that's a very different thing. And that is never regarded in a very high light in devotional practice. Then we have the third sense, which is karma mishra bhakti, which is, we have that verse in Srimad Bhagavatam. What is that verse? Akama savakamo va mokshakama udaradi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. That even if one has no material desire, akama, sarvakama, even if someone has all material desires, savakama va, akama savakamo va, mokshakama udardi, or one desires liberation, still Tivrena, one with great determination, should worship the Supreme. So when we're worshiping the Supreme, and we know that really we should be worshiping the Supreme for his own sake, not for our material benefit's sake, then that's karma mishra bhakti, because we know the right thing, but we're mixing bhakti with our strong magnetic pull still for karma that we've cultivated for many lifetimes. So this is karma mishra bhakti. So you just have to be aware of which kind of karma yoga we're talking about. And until I came to realize that there are these three completely different uses of the word karma yoga, did I begin to unscramble things in the Bhagavad Gita. There's a tendency, I think, among devotees that we think each one of the words that's used has one and only one meaning, and it's like a technical word. And wherever you use it, it always must mean the same thing. But just be aware that it's not like that. And if you think that way, you're going to get kind of fogged over at some point, because you'll see that sometimes words are used in a slightly different sense. And this is something that trips people up all the time. It's not just Sanskrit, but every language in the world does this, that there are nuances of a particular word, and in one setting or one context, the word may mean one thing, but in another context, it may mean another thing. So Varnashram Dharma has a number of different subtleties that if you don't keep them straight, you will also get tripped up, because it appears Prabhupada's contradicting himself. There's a lot of these kind of things that seem to crop up that if you're not careful, to understand what's actually being talked about, you may get misled. All right. Does that answer your question, or are you still a little confused on that whole issue? I don't mind speaking more.
Yes, Maharaj. Actually, that answers it very nicely, and that actually clarifies my many other questions I had in the past. So, yep, very, very helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Uh, for a long time, I struggled with Bhagavad Gita, and I tried to write my own little outlines of it and this and that and the other. And then I heard about Burijan doing his kind of overview of Bhagavad Gita, the book Surrender Unto Me. And then when I looked at that, I realized that I was doing the same thing he was doing to some extent. I wasn't as proficient as he was at it. And I didn't get as far through it as he did, you know, but it really helped me to understand that somebody else was going through the same issues that I was going through, figuring out how this stuff relates to each other. Because the Bhagavad Gita is kind of like the Vedanta Sutra. It just hits each point for just a few minutes and then immediately moves on to the next point, and then the next point, and then the next point, and you're left trying to figure out how these things fit together, and a lot of the details are left out. Srimad Bhagavatam doesn't do that so much. So with Srimad Bhagavatam, you get a much more sort of holistic and complete look at something before we move on to the next thing. But Bhagavad Gita kind of hits and moves on, you know, and this is why I was struggling for many years to figure out how the thing actually tied together. And then, you know, I wrote my own outlines. And then finally, when I ran across Surrender Unto Me, that really consolidated many other things that I had often wondered about. So that's why oftentimes when I talk, I try to bring up some of these things that were stumbling blocks for me at an earlier point in my life.
Marge, I have a question that you really hit home just now, and that was when you were sharing that to really understand Bhagavad Gita, it takes you in so many directions as opposed to the Bhagavatam. How important it is, Marge, then for devotees to really, really read and learn and understand Bhagavad Gita, not on their own, and trying to analyze on their own, because if it goes in this way, and all the other ways, but really to learn from the right source or with the right teacher. How important is that? Because nowadays I hear people, devotees saying, oh, I'm reading it on my own. But from what you're saying, it goes in so many layers.
Well, yeah, always, you know, understanding Bhagavad Gita within the association of devotees is very important. Uh, that's why I think everyone, whenever they read, should usually have a notebook with them to write down questions they might have. And then they should approach devotees who might be able to answer those questions. And then they can kind of get a sense of what they might have missed or what mistakes they might be encumbered by. This is the real problem with the Vedas is, you know, I was going through all this whole litany a minute ago about these various different Vedic scriptures. You can imagine how a Westerner dropped into Vedic literature for whatever reason someone might be interested in looking at the Vedas. They start reading the Rig, Sama, and Tarva, Yajur Veda, or one of those, you know. You get bored very quickly and you wonder, well, what's the great deal about this, you know, and you just walk away. Or else, you know, what I always think is when your Sankirtan devotee finally sells Joe Anybody a Bhagavad Gita, and Joe Anybody goes home and they think, what's all this about? Let me check this out. And they sit on their bed and they open it up, and right away they say, Dhritarashtra Uvacha. And of course, they can't even figure out how to pronounce Dhritarashtra. It's a strange looking word. And then they see Duryodhana, and then they see Sanjay, and they see all these names. They say, ooh, let me just put this on the shelf. When I have more time and I'm a little bit more, focused, I'll get to this, So I think this scares a lot of people off because it's mystifying, But if you go through Bhagavad Gita with the help of someone who can understand what you're probably going to run into, the various barbed wire you're going to get snagged on, and they can undo that. And then you can kind of go through much more easily. And that's why, one needs a spiritual master. Of course, as we understand that in the process of coming to devotional service, ado shraddha tatu sadhu sangha. So first there's a faith that there's something out there, then there's sadhu sangha. This means associating with devotees and getting our misgivings and misconceptions sliced so that we can actually understand what the Bhagavad Gita is really telling us. And then we can take initiation, which means, now we're getting into regular sadhana, et cetera, et cetera. So all this is why we need the association of devotees. And it will help us cut through things. I think many devotees who are younger have no idea what it was like maybe 30 years ago to come into Krishna consciousness, where there was the Bhagavad Gita, and not even all the versions of Bhagavatam were easy to get, all the different cantos. They might be in print, they might be out of print. And when you read them, there was nobody really who you knew for sure you could ask, and you couldn't get on a cell phone and call them, nor was there any easy way to reference anything on the internet. All this stuff didn't exist. So you were just kind of on your own, and if your temple was big and had a lot of, very scholarly devotees, then you could get your questions answered. If you were in some obscure temple out somewhere nowhere, good luck. How are you going to figure anything out? Of course, Krishna has so mercifully created many ways for us to associate with each other. Since then, now we have the internet. Now we have various devotees giving commentaries. Now we have books like Surrender Unto Me and Unveiling His Lotus Feet and things like that by Burijan and other people who are explaining things that might otherwise, snag us up. And we can join some group. And with, Zoom and Facebook and all these things, now we can regularly associate with devotees who are working their way through some aspects of either Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, and we can get our questions and misconceptions answered and clarified, and that helps a lot. So we really have to count our blessings at this point. Excuse me.
Thank you, Maharaj. Are there any questions from anyone? Can you please do unmute yourself, ask your question, and mute back?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, we accept my humble obeisances. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. This is Dhir Krishna Das. So Maharaj, thank you so much for taking this topic, because I think very misunderstood concepts are there. Most of the devotees don't understand, including me. And interestingly, on last Friday in our Namhata, we were talking about all the sacrifices.
Just a second. I've got a knock on the door. Hang on. I didn't expect this. Yeah, I'm not in a studio here. Just
Sure,
a minute.
Maharaj is a very nice background.
I learned how to do that, so I'm going to try that next time.
But a D told me there's a leak. Yeah. Where is it? If you go down in the basement, you'll see that where the altar is. If you go to the very back, go down that stairway in the very back, you'll see that right above where the DDs once were, there's a big drip there. It's gone now. Near to the you'll see I've got cups. Yeah, it's against the window.
This is a very nice topic that Marge is talking about.
The back of the building, and it pools the very bottom there where there's no floor anymore. It tees there because there's a window now, and that's where the drip comes. You can see that. So where do you think it's coming from? I think it's coming on the, it's coming either from the
Anyone has questions, they can also put on the chat.
pools on the, the rain pools on the sea, on the roof. It's a flat roof, and the drain pipes are plugged or something, and you can't see any water. I was looking at it the other day when it was raining, and you don't see water dripping down the front of the building. I think it's dripping down the back of the building rather, behind the cladding. Somehow the water's getting back there, and it's leaking down, and it pools down at the very bottom where that window is, and that's where it comes out. Is there any? You go up and up and up and up the stairs, and there's a door. All right. Okay. All right. Thank you. Sorry about that. We had a interruption there. I don't know if you all heard that, but we're. All right, so I'm broadcasting again. So, what was I missed the question again? What was that?
So, Maharaj, my question is like you were talking about all this bhakti, all the yoga ladder. So, is it because it's very easy to, like you mentioned, it's very easy to get lost in the words, but we try to study Bhagavad Gita on our own. So, is it a safe understanding or safe to understand that the combination of karma yoga and jnana yoga, we can call it as bhakti yoga, like doing action for Krishna in the full realization of Krishna? Is it a safe understanding, Maharaj?
Yeah. Let me try to clarify that for sure here, that what we're talking about is that, let me bring this up here, that karma yoga or karma kanda, the real problem there is that one thinks that the real goal of what they want is material gratification. That's the real problem. In Bhakti Yoga, one serve Krishna only for Krishna's benefit. And that's why we call it Karma Mishra Bhakti. So Karma Mishra Bhakti is actually bhakti mixed with karma. We are not mixing the philosophical concepts. We are trying to do pure bhakti, but we are, because of our conditioned nature, still to some extent acting in a karmic way. We hope for material benefit. Whereas for people who are genuinely in karma yoga, they're not trying to purify to bhakti. They're just happy serving God so that God will serve them. That's as far as it goes with them. They're on a much lower realization. So superficially they seem the same, but there's a big difference. And that one difference is that devotees know they should want to serve Krishna only for Krishna's benefit, not for their own material desire. Whereas karmis, they don't know that. Even if they understand there's a God, they think in terms of pleasing God, but not really for God's sake. They think in terms of pleasing God, so God will please them. So I hope I can make that clear.
Yes.
It's still a little kind of complicated to understand, and that's why I think it's often the devotees get tripped up on this stuff. But I'm trying to make it as simple as I can here. So bhakti yogis know that they're supposed to serve God, and if they can actually do that without any material benefit, that's called unalloyed devotion. Anibilasita sunyam jnana karmati anavritam anakulyena krishnanushilaram bhaktir uttamam. That's what that verse is talking about. That with no desire for karma or jnana or adi, as it goes there, karma anadi anavritam. So anya bilasita sunyam, things that are not focused on Krishna should be 0. Sunya means 0. Anyabilasata sunyam, things that are unrelated to Krishna should be 0. Karma anadi anavritam, that karma and jnana and all these things should be also eschewed. They should be rejected. Anakulyena Krishnanushilanam, that service should be favorable to Krishna. Bhakti Uttamam, and this is pure bhakti. So this is the Vedic definition of bhakti yoga. And if you can do that, you are performing pure devotional service. And this is our goal. This is what we're shooting for, but it may take some time to get there. And we know what the goal is, and if we continue performing devotional service, we will eventually become unalloyed devotees. And this is, Prabhupada uses this word unalloyed. And of course, an alloy in metallurgy means 2 metals mixed together. Brass, as I understand, is copper and tin mixed together, if memory serves. But gold is just a single metal. It's not a mixture of any other thing. It's just gold. But we know that there are various types of gold which are less pure than pure gold, and they have some admixture of something else. So when a metal is just one thing, it's pure, then it's called unalloyed. It's not alloyed with any other metal. And this same metaphor applies to devotional service, that we are doing just one thing and not others. We are doing just bhakti yoga. But before you can do bhakti yoga purely, you have to do bhakti yoga in a mixed way. So in the approach to doing pure devotional service, we are doing mixed devotional service. We know it's mixed, and we know that we should want it to be pure. That's what we know that karma yogis don't know. Or many people from other religions, they also understand that there's a God, and they understand that God should be worshipped, and they understand God is the highest thing. But what they also don't know is that they don't know that material desire is something that's going in the wrong direction. They don't understand that that interferes with devotion to God. So when you are performing activities aimed at your own material sense gratification, that's called karma or karma yoga or kanda. These are subtly different things, but they are pretty much in the same category because we are focusing on our material desires. And we should try to go for pure unalloyed devotion. So I hope that helps. And just bear in mind that whenever you see the word karma yoga, you've got to really stop and ask yourself, what context do we mean karma yoga here? Is it a synonym for bhakti yoga, which it could be? Is it a synonym for karma, which it could be? Or is it a synonym for karma mishra bhakti, which it also could be? Because at 3 different places in the Bhagavad Gita, the word is used in meaning one of those 3 different things. Someplace I had it written down where the exact purport or verse is where it actually says that, but I don't know where that is right now. I could, next time I give this lecture, I'll get it out, because it's really illustrative to show you how in one place the same word gets used in 3 different ways.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Marge, there's a question on the chat. This is from Vrinda. She says, Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. My name is Vrinda Devi. What is bad karma and good karma?
Okay. That's a pretty straight ahead question. In Sanskrit, we have punya karma and papa karma, so punya is pious activity, that activity which is intended for future material benediction. When we do things in line with the Vedic scriptures, when we do things in alignment with the Vedic scriptures, then we have good karma. And in the future, we will be benedicted for that. When we violate the Vedic injunctions, then we get papa karma. We will have to suffer in the future. So karma is the sort of promissory note of what we do today, which will be cashed in the future. So sometimes karma comes right away, and sometimes karma may take some time before it winds its way back to the reaction that we actually experience. There are 4 stages that are, technically bija, kuta, sta, parabdha, and aparabdha karma, which are described in the Nectar of Devotion. That, we have some kind of bija or seed of some material desire. And when the external circumstances are right, that seed finds itself next to a very, very conducive situation to satisfy that sinful desire. So we commit the sinful activity. And then we get kutastha. We are now creating a tendency to do that sinful thing again and again. And because we do it again and again, we're building up what's called aparabdha karma, which means karma that has not actually yet hit us. It's waiting for us in the future, and it's building up like a balloon payment or something like that. We are getting worse and worse and worse. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And finally, one day it crashes on us, and then we are experiencing what's called prarabdha karma, which is karma that has finally matured and is causing us suffering in the here and now. So this is the way karma works. This is the way good and bad karma work. Good karma gives us future benefit in the future time, and bad karma gives us material suffering in the future time. And spiritual life or devotional service burns up both of them, not just good karma, and not just bad karma. It has to burn up good karma too, because to experience good karma, you have to come back to the material world to experience the good karma. And generally people misuse good karma, so you're still entangled in the material world. That's why we want to burn up both good and bad karma. And this is called akarma. So in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, it explains that there is karma, vikarma, and akarma. So vikarma means that we are giving up, or we are getting negative karma from doing sinful actions. Karma means we are getting good reactions from doing things that are in contact with or in restrictions of the Vedas. We are acting properly. And akarma means we're doing devotional service, which is burning to ashes both good and bad karma. And so this is kind of a quick overview of what I call Karma 101. It's the basic understanding of karma. Does that more or less answer your question?
Yes, Maharaj, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Maharaj, I have a question. In your presentation earlier, you had the religion oval layout where the first was Vaishnavism, Shivite, Durga worshipper, and Advaita Vedanta believers. And my question is, Maharaj, what is the hindrance that causes the 2 through 4 to not take to Vaishnavism? What is the block? What is the hindrance? Yes.
Yeah, so there are various material desires that snag an individual so that they want to know something about the Supreme, but at the same time, they don't want to know the full deal. So this is why we find these different levels. To actually know who and what the Supreme is, one has to be ready to give up everything. Those who are in these other statuses, either Shaivism or Shakta worship or Advaita Vedanta, they're still clinging to some, in many cases, very subtle material desire. Like those who are in Advaita Vedanta, they're clinging to wanting to become God, which Prabhupada says is the last snare. So they're giving up many material, mundane, material types of gratification, certainly, because if you're serious about Advaita Vedanta, you have to live a very austere life. Um, so they're giving up many things, but they are not giving up the desire to become God. And with Shakta worship and, Shakta worship, you're still basically trying to get material desires fulfilled, but now you're not going to Krishna, you're going to Durga Devi to do that. And that's why, especially there's this, what is it, Durga Puja, where everybody goes, Dehi, 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 give me this, give me this, give me this. And they're offering all these prayers to Devi or Durga or whatever they call her, and they're asking her for various material benedictions. So this is very much a part of that type of worship. And Shaivism, again, is usually also some kind of either desire for mystic power or for some kind of material benediction. We learn in the Vedic scriptures and many of the Srimad Bhagavatam stories that most of the demons were worshippers of Shiva. So that's not to say that modern worshippers of Shiva are all demons. I'm not trying to indicate that. I don't want to go out on the internet with that one. But but basically, what I'm trying to suggest is that it's easier to have a material outlook and fit in with a view that Shiva's is supreme. And we know that when one worships Krishna, then we know that it's not so easy anymore. As a matter of fact, generally it's said that Lord Shiva has nothing. He lives in a crematorium and he associates with snakes and has ashes smeared all over his body. Yet his followers are usually fabulously wealthy. Now, contrast that with Krishna. Krishna has everything, and his followers are usually drastically poverty-stricken. So oftentimes I think in India, many Indian people, they are drastically afraid of worshiping Krishna, that he might take everything away from them. So they play it safe by worshiping Shiva, which there's that fear is not so strong. So again, we see that because there's either a subtle or a gross material attachment somewhere, people will not come to the bottom line of spiritual life until they give that up, and then they can see that Vaishnavism, that Bhakti Yoga is the highest thing. And actually, Narada Muni chastised Vyasadeva, saying that the way you have written the Vedas is abominable. You have set it up so that most people will miss the point. Instead of actually trying to worship the Supreme, they will be happy with either getting mystic power, merging with Brahman, with acquiring the heavenly planets, with getting all kinds of material benedictions. They will settle for all that garbage instead of actually going for the highest thing. So you've done a great disservice. And that's when Vedavyas wrote Bhagavatam, where, as it says, this literature kicks out all other cheating religions, In other words, it does not make any compromises with karma, jnana, or yoga. It says that, bhakti is the thing, that's what you should do, and there's no eulogizing of these other paths at all, but it gets right to the brass tacks. So we can then ask the question, well, if it actually is an impediment, then why is it there? And the answer is that some people are just not ready for bhakti. They don't want bhakti. They would rather do some pious thing where they still are attracted and attached to material gratification, but they do so in a somewhat religious and civilized way, so it doesn't create so much problem. Bhaktivinoda Thakur once said that if all the Vedic literatures burned, like the Romans burned the library at Alexandria, if all the Vedic literatures burned, but only Srimad Bhagavatam was saved, he said there would be no loss to the world. That's how Bhaktivinoda Thakur put it. You know, that's pretty extreme. But still, we see that the other Vedas are there so that those who are not really ready for the real giving up of everything material, those that are not ready, they can follow this lesser path and become a little bit purified, and maybe at a future time take up the real path of the Vedas, though there's no guarantee that that will happen. And oftentimes it does not happen right away.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you so much. Are there any other questions? Can you please do unmute yourself and ask, or you can even type your question in the chat. We are almost close to 6. Oh, we are at 6:30.
Yeah, that's what we're supposed to end.
Yes, March, around that time, but I just wanted to give devotees a chance if they have
Okay.
other questions, because I don't want to miss anyone out if they have holding on to their mind. So if there isn't any questions, I'm just going down the chat to see if anyone has unmuted or raised their hands. I don't see anyone. If there's no question, normally, March, we end the program by chanting the praise of Lord Nrsimhadev. And due to Bhakti Swami's critical condition, being in the ICU, we have been offering our Nrsimhadev prayers to Bhakti Swami Maharaj. I would like to ask you, Maharaj, if you would like to lead the Nrsimhadev prayers for Bhakti Swami. It will not be in a call and response because that creates latency.
I know.
Yes. So if you don't mind, Maharaj, we would like to offer. Yes, it gets kind of crazy. So you
totally crazy.
Yes.
And responsive chanting are a no-go on Zoom for sure.
No,
At least at this point, until they discover some new higher bandwidth thing that makes it almost instantaneous.
Yes, Maharaj. So we would like to ask if you could lead the prayers for Bhakti Swami so that we can all really meditate on him and pray to Lord Krishna to touch his healing hands on him and he can be cured.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Prahlada Lada Daine. Prahlada Lada Daine. Hiranyakasi Purvaksaha. Hiranyakasi Purvaksaha. Silatankana Kalai. Silatankana Kalai. Ito Nisingo Parato Nisingo. Ito Nisingo Parato Nisingo. Yato Yato Yamitato Nisingo. Yato Yato Yamitato Nisingo. By here Nisingo Riday Nisingo. By here Nisingo Riday Nisingo. Narasimhamadim Saranam Prapadai. Narasimhamadim Saranam Prapadai. Tavakara Kamalavare Nakamadbhuta Sring Ham Dalita Hiranyakasipu Tanu Bringam Kesabadruta Nara Hari Rupa Jai Jagdisare Jai Jagadisare Jai Jagadisare Jaya Nisingadev Jaya Nisingadev Jaya Nisingadev, Jaya Nisingadev, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj. Haribo.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. His Holiness Bhakti Swami ki.
Jai.
His Holiness Chandrasekhar Maharaj ki. We want to thank you so much, Maharaj, for giving us your time. It's been a long time that we haven't seen you, so I'm so glad that we got your darshan. And now we would request if you could just unmute and let's give one huge big Haribol to Maharaj for giving his time and giving us so much mercy. If we can do.
Great.
Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Maharaj.
Thank you, Maharaj. Very good.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
So now with Krishna and Zoom, all things are possible.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Thank you so much, Maharaj.
We can see everybody.
Yes,
Okay.
Maharaj.
Hari
Hari Bol, Maharaj. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Haribo.